Welcome everyone to today's perfect, premier, penny-pinching, proliferating powerhouse of a deck tech. Tekuthal, Inquiry Dominus, is the leader of this deck, packed to the brim with loads of different kinds of counters to take full advantage of our doubling up proliferation. From bricks to loyalty to charge to indestructible to infect to study to +1/+1 counters, just counters in general. The deck also includes some spicy side strategies and other things we can take advantage of. But before we dive into the oceans of new Phyrexia, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. It goes a long way to supporting the channel, and with that out of the way, let's get completed. Tekuthal, Inquiry Dominus is a 4-mana, 2 generic, 2 blue, 3/5 legendary creature Phyrexian horror that has flying and says, pay 1 and 2 blue Phyrexian mana. Phyrexian mana, for the people that don't know, can be paid with 2 life for each pip of Phyrexian mana, so with 2 pips we could pay 4 life and 1 generic mana to activate this ability, or 2 blue mana and 1 generic. Either way. Remove 3 counters from among other artifacts, creatures, and planeswalkers you control. Put an indestructible counter on Tekuthal, Inquiry Dominus. Our commander has a pretty powerful ability with a clear-cut goal in mind. Proliferate. What's even better about this deck is twofold. 1, we don't actually need our commander to execute our game plan, our creatures will handle that for us. And 2, our commander has a way to give itself indestructible, which makes it hard to be removed once it gets on the table, accelerating our game plan exponentially. Our creatures do a lot of heavy lifting as far as our deck's game plan goes, starting with Enclave Cryptologist. It puts level counters on itself that we can remove with our commander, but once we reach max level with it, it's a card draw engine. Gudul Lurker, Mistcloak Herald, Slitherblade, and Triton Stalker all fill a similar niche of being unblockable creatures that we can get massive when our counters start hitting. Aven Courier is phenomenal for spreading our counters out to other creatures. Silvermere, Thrumming Bird is an all-star in the deck, proliferating each time it deals damage. Chasm Skulker can get absolutely massive and leave a huge army behind when it gets removed. Flux Channeler benefits us again because we are playing quite a few non-creature spells. Simic Manipulator stills our opponent's creatures. Trawler Drake can become a huge threat in the air. Trophy Mage is here to search for any 3-mana artifacts we need, but one in particular that I'll cover later. Core Prowler benefits us twice because if it gets bigger, that's great, more infect damage, but if they kill it, that's great. We proliferate. Gitaxian Anatomist, Mindless Automaton benefits from all of our proliferating because we can remove 2 counters to draw a card. Murmuring Mystic gives us birds as we cast our instants and sorceries. Solemn Simulacrum. Viral Drake, another infector, but also a great proliferating mana sink. Serum Sovereign, Chained Throat Seeker. Deep Fathom Skulker turns our little 1/1 unblockables into card draw. And Myojin of Cryptic Dreams, though very mana intensive, if we can proliferate its counters, things can get ridiculously out of hand. Moving on to our sorceries. Contentious Plans. Draw a card and proliferate?
Yes, please.
Curse of the Swine for removal. Hands of Binding is where we start to get into spicy tech for our unblockable creatures. Distorted Curiosity, Raven Form, Last Thoughts, Tezzeret's Gambit. Again, card draw is king, and this deck wants to proliferate. This card does both. Vivisection, Void Walk for more Cypher shenanigans. Vivisurgent's Insight, draw cards, proliferate, we've covered this, moving on. And Stolen Identity, let's make tokens out of any creature or artifact we want when our unblockable creatures get in for damage. Instants just pile on with protection for our creatures and even more card draw. Bring the Ending works early game with its Mana Leak first effect, but when we trigger Corrupted, it becomes a straight up counterspell. Speaking of, we also run counterspell. Experimental Augury, pick a card and proliferate. Negate, Prologue to Phyresis to give all of our opponents poison counters. With all the proliferation we're doing, this can easily lead to a table knockout. Resculpt, Frantic Search, Steady Progress, Factor Fiction, and Fuel for the Cause. Our artifacts bring even more counters for us to increase. Astral Cornucopia makes us more and more mana as we proliferate to victory. Everflowing Chalice will make us so much mana, the only difference is it will be colorless, unlike the Cornucopia. Font of Progress can dumpster an opponent's deck once our proliferation engine is up and running. Prosthetic Injector, just when our opponents thought the unblockable creatures at least couldn't poison them.
I'm poisoned!
Contagion Class can dish out a -1/-1 counter for our opponent's creatures, but also with all the extra mana we can make works great as a sink for us to proliferate into. Mind Stone, Power Conduit to throw charge counters on our artifacts, but we can also use it to put +1/+1 counters on our creatures, making our little 1/1 unblockables become a huge problem. Sky Diamond, Magistrate Scepter gives us extra turns if we remove 3 charge counters. Titan Forge can make us huge 9/9s. Transmogrifying Wand turns our opponent's scary creatures into Ox. Grimoire of the Dead gives us a huge finisher with Mass Reanimation. Lux Artillery can dome our opponents at our instep for 10 damage if we have 30 counters across everything. And Oracle's Vault lets us cheat mana cost if it has more than 3 brick counters on it. Up next is the enchantments, which is easy because there's only 2, Military Intelligence and Reconnaissance Mission. We also run 3 Planeswalkers because if you're going to proliferate, you might as well get some loyalty counters out of it. Jace, Architect of Thought, mildly shrinks our opponent's creatures with his +1, can help us dig with his -2, and his ultimate, which is what we are trying to get to, -8, lets us get our opponent's best things out of their deck. Kasmina, Enigmatic Mentor, gives our whole board Blanket Ward 2, and we can -2 to make a wizard and loot. And Will Kenrith, which will make an opponent's creature an 0/3 for his plus ability. With his minus ability, we draw 2 cards and makes our instant sorceries and planeswalkers 2 cheaper to cast. And his last ability gives us an emblem that will let us double up on all of our instants and sorceries. With all our proliferating means it's actually hilariously simple to reach the ultimate for our walkers. Lastly, the lands. Myriad Landscape and 35 Islands. Currently, this deck sits at about $35, but 10 of that cost is in the commander, so all in all, if you happen to pull it or proxy or copy the rest of the deck, it isn't that expensive. Making it perfect for new players who just pulled a sick promo art, or for people who like to twirl their mustache as their opponents watch in horror as you slowly tick up 10 poison counters while they do nothing about it. For upgrades, it's pretty simple stuff. Let's go a little harder on the proliferation with Staff of Completion. This is just a Swiss Army knife of abilities you would want to have. Ichormoon Gauntlet turns our less effective walkers into proliferating machines, which can turn into extra turns. Inexorable Tide is turbo proliferating. Teferi Master of Time gives us 2 extra turns when we ultimate. Guildpact Informant is another thrumming bird. Soul Ring and Arcane Signet for better mana. Of course, you have options like Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study if you have the money. And a Blighted Agent. I wanted to include it in this version, but it's more expensive than I remember it being. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the deck, and be sure to comment a favorite card or a commander you would like to see built on a budget, and I will catch you in the next one.